Olivia stood at the edge of the marble ballroom, watching crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across faces she had known her entire life, yet never truly felt accepted by. Her cousin Madeline glided past in a shimmering gold gown, her laughter sharp as broken glass as she whispered something to a cluster of relatives who turned to stare at Olivia with barely concealed amusement. The annual Bennett family gathering had always been this way, a spectacle of wealth and judgment where Olivia existed as nothing more than an afterthought. Lucas, her older brother, approached with that familiar smirk playing at the corners of his mouth, his tailored suit probably costing more than most people earned in 6 months. He held a champagne flute like a weapon of mockery as he surveyed the room with the confidence of someone who had never questioned his place in the world. "Olivia, you actually came this year," he said loud enough for nearby guests to hear, his voice dripping with false surprise. "I thought you might be too busy with whatever little projects you pretend are important." Madeline materialized beside him, her perfume overwhelming as she linked her arm through Lucas and fixed Olivia with a pitying stare. "Oh, Lucas, be nice," she cooed, though her eyes held no warmth. Poor Olivia cannot help that she did not inherit the Bennett brilliance or ambition or really anything of value. The small crowd around them erupted in polite laughter, the kind that cut deeper than outright cruelty. Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she maintained her composure, her fingers tightening slightly around her simple black clutch. She had learned long ago that reacting only fed their entertainment. Across the room, she noticed Nathan Wells standing apart from the crowd, his dark eyes watching the exchange with something that looked like disapproval. Nathan had been a family friend for years, the son of her late father's business partner, and one of the few people who had ever treated her with genuine kindness. Their eyes met briefly, and he offered a small, encouraging smile before Madeline's shrill voice pulled Olivia's attention back. "Grandmother is about to make the announcement," Madeline announced, her excitement barely contained, "about the inheritance distribution and the vault access. Everyone knows Lucas and I will be named primary beneficiaries." Olivia felt her heart skip, but kept her expression neutral. The vault. After all these years, they were finally going to open it. What they did not know, what none of them suspected, would change everything. Tonight, the laughter would turn to something else entirely. The family matriarch, Eleanor Bennett, rose from her velvet chair, commanding instant silence with merely her presence. Her silver hair was pulled back severely, and her diamond necklace caught the light as she surveyed her descendants with calculating eyes that missed nothing. She held an ornate envelope, sealed with the Bennett family crest. "Tonight, we open the vault," she announced, her voice carrying across the hushed ballroom. "The vault that has remained sealed since my son Richard passed away 5 years ago." Olivia's breath caught at the mention of her father, the only person in this family who had ever truly seen her, valued her, believed in her potential. Lucas stepped forward eagerly, his chest puffed with entitlement, while Madeline practically vibrated with anticipation beside him. However, Eleanor continued, her gaze sweeping past Lucas and Madeline and landing directly on Olivia. "There is something you all should know. The vault can only be opened by the person whose name appears on the access document." She broke the seal and unfolded the paper, her expression unreadable as she read aloud. "The sole heir with vault access is Olivia Christine Bennett." The ballroom erupted into chaos. "Impossible!" Lucas shouted, his face flushing red as he strode toward his grandmother. "Olivia has done nothing for this family. She has no business connections, no achievements, nothing." Madeline's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, her carefully maintained composure cracking. "This must be a mistake, grandmother," she insisted shrilly. "Olivia barely graduated from that mediocre college, while I have my master's degree and Lucas runs 3 companies." Eleanor raised one imperious hand, demanding silence. Richard's will was very specific and completely legal. Olivia alone has access. The terms are non-negotiable. Olivia felt every eye in the room turn toward her, heavy with resentment, disbelief, and barely concealed rage. Her hands trembled slightly, but she lifted her chin, refusing to shrink under their collective stare. Nathan moved closer, positioning himself near her, as if offering silent support, his presence somehow steadying her racing heart. "Well," Eleanor said, extending the document toward Olivia along with an antique key, "shall we proceed to the vault, my dear?" The walk through the mansion's east wing felt endless, with the entire family trailing behind them, muttering among themselves. Madeline kept shooting poisonous glares, while Lucas attempted to argue with Eleanor, who ignored him completely. Nathan walked beside Olivia, close enough that their hands occasionally brushed, sending unexpected warmth through her despite the tension. "You knew about this, didn't you?" he murmured quietly, for her ears only. "About what you would find in there?" Olivia met his eyes briefly, seeing genuine curiosity rather than judgment. "Some of it," she admitted softly. "My father spent years preparing me for this moment. He knew they would never accept me willingly." They reached the vault door, hidden behind a portrait in her father's old study. The portrait showed Richard Bennet smiling with young Olivia on his shoulders, both of them laughing at some long-forgotten joke. Eleanor handed her the key, and Olivia approached the massive steel door, her heart pounding so loudly she wondered if others could hear it. As she inserted the key and began turning the heavy lock, she heard Madeline whisper viciously to Lucas, "Whatever is in there cannot possibly prove she deserves anything." The lock clicked open. The vault doors swung open, revealing a space far larger than anyone expected, illuminated by motion-activated lights that flickered to life. Floor-to-ceiling shelves lined the walls, filled with document boxes, leather portfolios, and sealed containers, each meticulously labeled and organized. In the center stood a mahogany table with several folders arranged precisely, as if waiting for this exact moment. Eleanor gestured for Olivia to enter, and the family crowded behind, peering over shoulders and craning necks to see inside. Olivia stepped forward, her fingers trailing along the nearest shelf, where she spotted labels that made her pulse quicken. Patent applications, investment portfolios, property deeds, company ownership documents. "What is all this?" Lucas demanded, pushing forward rudely. "Just old paperwork that means nothing." Olivia turned to face them all, finally allowing herself a small smile. She picked up the first folder from the center table and opened it, revealing documents that made Eleanor's eyebrows rise sharply. "These are the patent filings for the Bennett Tech Innovations," she said, her voice steady and clear. "The inventions that generated 60% of the family company's revenue over the past decade. All filed under my name, with my designs, my prototypes, my research." The silence was deafening. Madeline snatched the folder, her eyes scanning frantically before her face went pale. This cannot be real. But it was. Page after page of technical drawings signed by Olivia, dated years ago, authenticated by patent offices and law firms. Lucas grabbed another folder, this one containing financial statements and investment records. "According to these documents," Olivia said, moving to stand beside Nathan, who was watching her with undisguised admiration, "I have been anonymously investing and growing a portfolio that is now worth approximately $200 million, separate from the family accounts, built entirely through my own research and strategic decisions." "Impossible," Lucas breathed, but his voice lacked conviction. Olivia continued, pulling out document after document. "Here are the property deeds for the 7 commercial buildings the family rents for their regional offices. I purchased them through a trust fund 3 years ago. You have all been paying me rent without knowing it. And here," she said, her voice hardening as she lifted a thick, sealed envelope, "are the documented records of financial misconduct, embezzlement schemes, fraud, tax evasion, all committed by various family members over the years. My father discovered everything before he died." Madeline stumbled backward, her face ashen, while Lucas looked like he might be sick.
Eleanor stood perfectly still, her expression shifting from shock to something that might have been grudging respect. "Your father was a brilliant man," Eleanor said quietly. "He protected you by giving you the evidence and the means to protect yourself. He knew they would try to diminish you, control you, push you aside." Olivia met her grandmother's gaze steadily. "He taught me everything. While everyone assumed I was wasting time on hobbies, I was building companies, filing patents, establishing financial independence. He made sure I would never need their approval or their inheritance." Nathan stepped closer, his hand gently touching her elbow. "This is incredible," he said softly, his eyes warm with admiration. "You built an empire in secret while they mocked you." The romance in his voice was unmistakable, and despite everything, Olivia felt her heart flutter. Lucas suddenly lunged forward, trying to grab the envelope containing the misconduct evidence, but Nathan moved swiftly, blocking him with surprising strength. "I would not do that," he warned, his usually gentle voice taking on steel. "Everything here is documented and backed up with copies held by attorneys. You cannot destroy the truth." Olivia looked at the faces surrounding her, seeing fear replacing arrogance and shock replacing contempt. The laughter had indeed turned to something else entirely. Eleanor moved closer to examine the documents herself, her weathered hands trembling slightly as she traced the signatures and seals that proved everything Olivia claimed. The rest of the family stood frozen, in various states of distress and disbelief, as the weight of the revelation settled over them like fog. Madeline was the first to recover her composure, though her voice shook with barely controlled panic. "Even if this is all true," she said desperately, "what do you plan to do with it? Ruin us all out of spite?" Olivia set down the envelope and turned to face her cousin directly, her expression calm, but her eyes blazing with years of suppressed emotion. "What I plan to do is give everyone in this room a choice," she said clearly. "You can continue as you have been, treating people as disposable, mocking those you consider beneath you, or you can change." Lucas laughed bitterly, though it sounded hollow. "And if we refuse to play along with your little morality lesson, then what? You destroy the family name?" Olivia picked up another folder, this one containing corporate documents and shareholding certificates. "I own 47% of Bennett Industries through various trusts and shell companies," she revealed. "Combined with grandmother's 30% stake, that gives us controlling interest. The company's future is now in our hands." Eleanor's eyes widened, but she nodded slowly as understanding dawned. "Your father arranged this?" "Yes," Olivia confirmed. "He knew Lucas would run the company into the ground, chasing short-term profits and personal glory. He knew Madeline would sell off assets to fund her lifestyle. He wanted to ensure the family legacy survived." Nathan watched the exchange with growing admiration, positioning himself slightly closer to Olivia as if drawn by an invisible force. The way he looked at her had shifted from friendly support to something deeper, more intense. She could feel the heat of his gaze even as she focused on her family. Madeline's carefully constructed facade finally crumbled completely. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking, "I have debts, commitments. If you expose everything or cut me off, I will lose everything." Olivia felt a flicker of sympathy, but held firm. "Then perhaps it is time to live within your means. My father left provisions for everyone in this family, but only if you agree to certain conditions." "What conditions?" Lucas asked suspiciously. "Ethical business practices for one," Olivia replied. "No more embezzlement, no more exploiting employees or cutting corners on safety. The properties and investments stay within the family, but are managed responsibly. And," she added, looking directly at Madeline, "everyone works, actually works. No more living off family money while contributing nothing." The younger cousins and relatives who had been silent witnesses began whispering among themselves. Some looked relieved, as if they had been waiting for someone to finally challenge the toxic family dynamics. Eleanor stepped forward and placed her hand on Olivia's shoulder, a gesture of support that shocked everyone present. "I should have protected you better after Richard died," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I let them treat you terribly because I was grieving and tired. But your father would be so proud of who you have become." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes, but blinked them away. Nathan moved to her other side, his presence solid and reassuring. Without thinking, she reached for his hand and he immediately laced his fingers through hers, the connection sending electricity up her arm. Lucas watched the gesture, his expression darkening with something beyond anger. "So, you have Nathan on your side too," he sneered. "Did she buy your loyalty as well, Wells?" Nathan's jaw tightened, but his voice remained level. "Nobody bought anything. Unlike some people, I can recognize integrity and brilliance when I see it. I have always believed Olivia was extraordinary, long before tonight proved it." The way he said it, with such conviction and warmth, made Olivia's breath catch. Madeline noticed the connection between them, and her expression shifted to calculation. "Oh, how convenient," she said with false sweetness. "The overlooked Bennett daughter and the wealthy family friend. Quite the partnership." "More than partnership," Nathan said firmly, his eyes never leaving Olivia's face. "Much more if she will have me." The ballroom seemed to hold its breath.
Olivia turned to fully face Nathan, her heart hammering against her ribs as she searched his face for any sign of jest or manipulation. But all she found was sincerity and an emotion so raw and honest it took her breath away. "You cannot be serious," she whispered, though hope bloomed treacherously in her chest. "After everything that just happened, you choose now to tell me this." Nathan smiled, that gentle, genuine smile that had always set him apart from her family's calculated expressions. "I have wanted to tell you for 3 years," he admitted softly, "but you were always so guarded, so protected. I thought you needed a friend more than another complication. Tonight, watching you stand up to them with such strength and grace, I realized I could not wait any more." Lucas made a disgusted sound, while Madeline looked between them with barely concealed jealousy. Eleanor, however, smiled knowingly, as if she had suspected this all along. Around them, the other family members began whispering, but Olivia found she no longer cared what they thought. For the first time in years, she felt truly free. "I need time," she told Nathan honestly, "time to process everything, to rebuild what this family broke, to figure out who I am beyond survival mode. But," she squeezed his hand tighter, "time does not mean never." Nathan's smile widened. "I can wait. I have waited this long." Eleanor cleared her throat, drawing attention back to the matter at hand. "We have decisions to make," she announced. "Olivia has presented terms. I suggest we accept them. The alternative is far less pleasant for everyone involved." Over the next hour, the family signed agreements and contracts that Olivia's father had prepared years ago. Each person committed to ethical conduct, regular audits, and actual contribution to the family business. Those who refused, including 2 distant uncles and 1 cousin, would receive modest settlements but no further family support. Lucas signed last, his hand shaking with rage as he scrawled his signature. "This is not over," he muttered darkly. Olivia met his gaze unflinching. "Yes, it is. You can either grow into a better person or fade into irrelevance. The choice has always been yours." As the family dispersed in various states of shock and resignation, Nathan and Olivia found themselves alone in the vault, surrounded by the evidence of her father's faith in her. "He would have liked you," Olivia said softly, touching one of the document boxes. "My father. He always said the measure of a person was how they treated those with nothing to offer them. You were kind to me when I was nobody." Nathan pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her waist as she melted into his embrace. "You were never nobody," he murmured against her hair. "You were always brilliant and strong and worthy. They just refused to see it." She tilted her face up to him, and he lowered his mouth to hers in a kiss that felt like coming home after a long, difficult journey. It was tender and passionate and full of promise for a future neither of them had dared to imagine. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Olivia rested her forehead against his. "I am terrified," she admitted, "of running the company, of this between us, of everything changing so fast." "Good," Nathan said with a soft laugh.
That means you are brave enough to try. Being fearless is easy. Being afraid and doing it anyway, that is real courage." Together they walked out of the vault, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. Behind them, the portrait of Richard Bennett seemed to smile down approvingly, as if he had orchestrated this exact moment from beyond. The family gathered in the main hall would never look at Olivia the same way again. The laughter had turned to shock, then respect, and perhaps eventually understanding. But more importantly, Olivia no longer needed their validation. She had found her own worth, proven her own capabilities, and discovered love with someone who saw her true value all along. As they stepped into the cool night air, Nathan squeezed her hand. "What happens now?" he asked. Olivia smiled with newfound confidence, radiating from every pore. "Now, we build something better."